Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt completely alone? Have you ever looked around, at work, with family, among friends, in that group chat that never stops buzzing, and realized that no one there knows who you really are? There's a silent pain that almost no one has the courage to admit. The pain of not belonging. It doesn't bleed. It doesn't show up on a medical test, but it eats away at you from the inside. And what if I told you that this pain might be the most valuable thing you carry? Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human mind, taught something unsettling. Only those who, at some point, endure their own loneliness, ever find themselves. Over the next few minutes, you're going to discover why your isolation might actually be a calling, and why ignoring that calling may be the most expensive mistake of your life. Think about the last time you felt out of place. Maybe it was at a party, with loud music and laughter all around, while you held a cup and pretended to have fun. Or at Sunday lunch, surrounded by relatives who love you but who talk about a world that's no longer yours. Maybe it's right now, lying in bed with the light of your phone hitting your face, scrolling through the screen and watching everyone seemingly connected, included, happy. Everyone except you. I know it's hard to hear this, but that feeling has a name. It's not you being oversensitive. It's not drama. It's the feeling of someone who notices too much and can no longer take part in shallow conversations with their whole heart. Someone who tries to fit in, laughs at the right moment, agrees when they have to, and comes home with a strange emptiness in their chest, as if they had betrayed someone. And maybe you have. Maybe you're betraying the one person you should never abandon. The world treats this pain like a disease. An ad pops up promising more connections, more people. The structural logic of our time works like this. If you're alone, the problem is yours, and the solution is for sale. One more app, one more crowd for you to dissolve into. But no one stops to ask the question that really matters. What if this loneliness isn't a flaw to be fixed? What if it's a calling to be heard? That was exactly the conclusion reached by a man who spent his entire life studying what happens in the depths of the human mind. And the most curious part is that he didn't arrive at that conclusion by reading books in a comfortable library. He arrived at it because he lived this pain firsthand, ever since he was a child. Carl Gustav Jung was born in 1875 in a village in Switzerland, the son of a Protestant pastor. And if you imagine that the father of analytical psychology was a popular child surrounded by friends, get ready to recognize yourself in him. In his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, written at the end of his life, Jung recounts that from a very early age, he felt different from other children. While his classmates played and competed for each other's attention, he dove into an inner world so intense that sometimes the reality outside seemed less real than what was happening inside him. He played alone and created secret rituals he told no one about. He kept a carved figurine inside a case, hidden in the attic, like a sacred secret that belonged to him alone. That boy carried a feeling you may know all too well, the uncomfortable certainty that there was something in him that others couldn't see, and that if he showed it, he would be ridiculed. So he learned to do what almost all of us learn to do: split himself in two. One part for the world, another part for himself. This matters for a simple reason. When Jung talks about loneliness, he doesn't speak like a distant professor, analyzing an object of study. He speaks as someone who felt, in childhood, the weight of not belonging, and who, instead of running from that strangeness, decided to descend to the bottom of it, to understand what was there. The psychology he created was born from that wound, and that's why it speaks so directly to anyone who feels that same wound today. In that same autobiography, Jung describes something that may be one of the most honest accounts ever written about human inner conflict. He realized, while still young, that two personalities lived within him. He called them number one and number two. Personality number one was the pastor's son, the ordinary student who went to school and talked about the topics of the day. It was the part of him that functioned in the world. Personality number two was something else entirely. It was ancient and deep, connected to something timeless. When he was alone, in nature or in silence, it was this second personality that awakened, and Jung felt that there, and only there, he was truly himself. Now answer me honestly. Doesn't that sound familiar? You also have a version of yourself that goes to work, answers emails, smiles in meetings, posts the right photo. And there's another version, the one that shows up in the shower, in the middle of the night, in the grocery store line, on the quiet ride home. A version that thinks things you never say out loud and longs for something you can't even name. That wonders if this is all life is. It's completely valid to feel this. It's not a sign of imbalance, it's a sign of depth. The problem is that the modern world has declared a silent offensive against this second personality. Every minute of your day has been filled. Notifications, screens, noise, demands, deadlines. Silence has become a luxury item. And without silence, that deep part of you can't breathe. It gets suffocated, day after day, until you forget it exists. All that's left is the mask. And this is where things get dangerous. Jung gave that mask a name, the persona. In ancient theater, a persona was the mask an actor wore to play a role. Jung realized that all of us do exactly that in social life. We build an image in order to be accepted. The competent professional, the devoted mother, the fun friend, the strong one who never breaks down. The persona isn't a problem in itself. It's necessary. Nobody goes through life exposing their insides to everyone. The problem begins when a person identifies completely with the mask, when they forget they're playing a role and start believing they are the role. Jung warned that this is one of the saddest fates anyone can have. Living an entire life without ever having been introduced to yourself. The person does everything right. They study what they were told to study, work where it's safe, marry at the expected age, buy what the neighbors buy. On the outside, a successful life. On the inside, a desert. And then, around 40 or 50, comes the silent collapse, the feeling of having lived a stranger's life. Jung saw this every day in his practice. Successful, admired people coming to him with a devastating question. Why does none of this mean anything? He even compared those who live only through the persona to a man who rents out his own face and, one day, when trying to return it, discovers he has forgotten which one was his. The image is harsh, but it precisely describes what happens silently inside millions of homes. People exhausted from keeping up a character, unaware that the exhaustion doesn't come from work or routine, but from the continuous effort of not being who they are. I'm not saying this to make you anxious, but to wake you up, because belonging at any cost has a price, and the price is you. Every time you swallow who you are to fit into a group, a part of you fades a little. Every time you pretend to agree, laugh at something you don't find funny, hold back an opinion, abandon a dream because someone called it ridiculous, you sell a piece of your soul in exchange for acceptance. And the worst part is that this acceptance never satisfies, because the one being accepted isn't you, it's the mask. There's an invisible force pushing you down this path, and it's far bigger than it seems. Jung dedicated part of his work to studying what happens to the individual when they dissolve into the crowd, and his conclusions are uncomfortable. He observed that, within the mass, the human being regresses. Alone, a person thinks and feels the weight of their own choices. In the middle of a crowd, they outsource all of that. Responsibility gets diluted, awareness drops. The person starts repeating what everyone repeats and hating what everyone hates. And in that herd, they feel a lukewarm, false sense of security, because being wrong along with everyone else seems less frightening than being right alone. Look at the dynamics of our time and tell me he was wrong. Millions of people consuming the same content, repeating the same ready-made opinions, buying the same products, measuring their own worth by the same numbers on a screen. Technology promised individuality and delivered uniformity on an industrial scale. It has never been easier to belong, and it has never been rarer to truly exist. Greatness, by definition, doesn't live there. No idea that changed the world was ever born from consensus. No work that has endured for centuries was created by someone too busy pleasing the majority. Greatness requires a step outside the current, and that step has a name that scares people: loneliness. But hold on, before you get the wrong idea, I need to make a distinction that changes everything. Because there are two kinds of loneliness, and confusing one with the other is what keeps so many people trapped in suffering. There's suffered isolation. It's the loneliness of those who hide out of fear, of those who were rejected so many times they gave up, of those who built walls to avoid being hurt again, of those who confused protection with prison. That loneliness shrinks you. It's a prison with the door locked from the inside, and there's chosen solitude. It's the conscious retreat of someone who understands they need silence to hear their own soul. That solitude expands you. It's not an escape from the world. It's an appointment with yourself. Jung never preached abandoning life, permanent isolation, the cave forever. What he advocated was strategic retreat, stepping away from the noise long enough to hear the only voice that can tell you who you are. I understand perfectly when you feel that being alone hurts. In the beginning, it really does hurt. Silence is uncomfortable because, in it, everything you've been avoiding finally shows up. But that's exactly where the treasure lies. And no one proved this more radically than Jung himself. Because there was a moment in his life when everything collapsed, and he was forced to plunge into a solitude so deep it nearly swallowed him. What he found in that abyss became the foundation of everything he created afterward. And that's the story you need to hear now. In 1913, Jung was a man at his peak, recognized and respected, the intellectual heir of Sigmund Freud, hailed as the future of the psychoanalytic movement. And then he did the most dangerous thing anyone can do. He disagreed. Jung could no longer accept fundamental parts of Freud's theory, and staying true to his own vision meant breaking with his mentor. The break came, and the cost was brutal. Colleagues turned their backs. Invitations disappeared. The man who had been the center of a movement found himself, almost overnight, on the outside. What came next was the darkest period of his life. Jung plunged into a direct confrontation with his own unconscious. Disturbing visions, overwhelming dreams, inner voices, images that seemed to have a life of their own. He himself admitted that, at times, he feared losing his grip on his own mind. But instead of numbing it all, he did something almost no one has the courage to do. He sat down before the abyss and started taking notes. Night after night, he recorded every vision, every inner dialogue, every image, every descent. Those records, written and illustrated by hand with the care of a medieval monk, became the Red Book, one of the most remarkable documents in the history of psychology, kept locked away by his family for decades and published only in 2009. And here's the detail that matters to you. It was from that lonely, painful period that practically all of Jung's great ideas were born. The archetypes, the shadow, the collective unconscious, the process of individuation. Looking back, he said that his entire life's work consisted of elaborating what poured out of those years of crossing. Do you see the pattern? Creation came after the descent. The light came after the confrontation with the dark. There was no shortcut. And what exactly appears when you're truly alone? What is this thing waiting for you in the silence? The thing most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is everything you rejected in yourself in order to be accepted. The anger you swallowed as a child, because good boys don't get angry. The ambition you hid, because wanting too much seemed ugly. The stifled sensuality, the denied envy, the hidden fear, the fragility disguised as strength. None of it disappears. It all goes down into the basement of the psyche. And from the basement, that energy keeps working, just behind your back. You know that disproportionate irritation a certain person triggers in you for no apparent reason. Jung would say, look closely, because that person is probably carrying, in broad daylight, something you buried in the dark. That's the mechanism of projection. We hate in others what we can't bear to recognize in ourselves. And as long as we live surrounded by noise and people, this game goes on indefinitely, because there's always a culprit available out there. Notice how the entire world seems organized to prevent this encounter. You wake up, and the first thing your hand reaches for is your phone. In the shower, your mind is already rehearsing the day's answers. In traffic, a podcast. In line, the screen. At lunch, the screen. In bed, the screen again, until your eyes grow heavy. Do the math. How many minutes of your day yesterday were spent in true silence, with no stimulus coming in? For most people, the honest answer is 0. 0 minutes a day in your own company. And then we wonder why so many people feel lost, anxious, tired, like strangers in their own lives. It's not a mystery, it's math. Nobody truly knows someone they never spend time alone with, even when that someone is yourself. Constant company is the perfect distraction. In the crowd, you never have to face yourself. Alone, there's nowhere to run. The shadow climbs the basement stairs and sits down right in front of you. And then you have 2 options. Run away again, turning on the TV, opening the app, scheduling any commitment, inventing any urgency, or hold its gaze. Jung was blunt about what's at stake in that choice. Until you make conscious what you carry in the unconscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That pattern that keeps repeating, the same type of relationship that ends the same way, the same self-sabotage at the decisive moment, the same outburst you regret, the same promise that next time will be different. It's not bad luck, it's the shadow behind the wheel. Facing this hurts, but it's the only doorway into the process Jung considered the true purpose of human existence. He called this process individuation. The word sounds technical, but the idea is profoundly simple. Individuation is the path of becoming who you really are. It's the slow work of gathering the scattered parts of yourself, the accepted and the rejected, the light and the shadow, and integrating them into a true whole. It's ceasing to be a collage of other people's expectations and becoming a whole individual, undivided, unmistakable. And here's the truth no one wants to tell you. This path is non-transferable. No one can individuate for you. There's no course, guru, book, or relationship that can make this crossing in your place. Others can point out directions, but the territory is yours alone. And that's why, inevitably, it passes through solitude. Not because solitude is the goal, but because certain discoveries only happen when there's no one left to imitate, please, blame, or impress. Jung wasn't the only one who saw this. Decades earlier, a German philosopher took this intuition to the extreme, and his life impressed Jung so deeply that he dedicated years of seminars to studying it. Friedrich Nietzsche opened his most famous work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, with an image that sums up everything we've said so far. A man who leaves the world behind and climbs the mountain. Zarathustra spends 10 years in the solitude of the heights, in silence, maturing. And only then does he come down, overflowing, with something true to offer humanity. The order of events is the message. First the mountain, then the town square. First the encounter with yourself, then the offering to the world. Nietzsche understood, in his very flesh, that anyone who thinks ahead of their time walks alone for a while. If your ideas fit perfectly into the conversation, at any bar table, they would be everyone's ideas. The discomfort of not fitting in may be, in certain cases, simply the echo of a mind that has already left the place where the body still stands. And note one of history's ironies. Nietzsche paid that price in full. During his lifetime, his books barely sold. He wrote alone, in cheap boarding houses, in fragile health, practically ignored by the academic world of his time. He died without ever seeing the scale of the impact he would cause. Today, more than a century later, his ideas run through universities, films, books, and conversations all over the world. The man walked alone. His thought reached everyone. There's an uncomfortable lesson in that, about the mismatch between recognition and truth. They rarely arrive together, and those who demand the first as a condition usually give up the second. Now, an honest warning. I could end here with a beautiful phrase and leave you feeling inspired. But Jung never romanticized this path, and I won't either. He wrote that personality doesn't develop by chance, but at the cost of conscious, difficult, deliberate choices. Whoever decides to follow their own inner law pays a real toll. They will be misunderstood. You'll hear that you've changed, that you think you're better than everyone, that you're acting strange, that you've grown distant. People close to you will be unsettled because your change exposes their complacency. There will be nights of doubt when the lukewarm safety of the herd will seem tempting. That's not a sign you've taken the wrong path. It's a sign the path is real. Every deep transformation charges at the entrance and rewards at the exit. The opposite, the life of the mask, does the reverse. It soothes you now and charges everything at the end with interest. And if you want concrete proof that chosen solitude bears fruit, look at what Jung did with his. On the shore of Lake Zurich, he built with his own hands, stone by stone, a refuge called the Bollingen Tower. No electricity, none of the comforts of modern life. He chopped his own firewood, lit the fire, cooked his own food, pumped water from the well. And it was there, in that almost medieval silence, that he thought and wrote. And it was there that he found himself again. He said that at the tower he was in his deepest element, being more fully himself than anywhere else. This isn't the eccentricity of a genius. It's a principle that runs through all human creation. The work of art that moves you, the song that cuts right through you, the scientific discovery that changed your life, the book that seems to have been written just for you. All of it was born in hours of retreat, when someone endured the silence long enough to let something true rise to the surface. Depth requires diving, and you don't dive in a group. And don't think we're talking about months-long retreats in a cabin. Fertile solitude fits into real life. It's the walk without headphones. It's the first half hour of the morning without touching your phone. It's the notebook open on the kitchen table at night, when the house finally goes quiet, and the pen running uncensored across the paper. It's learning to sit with the discomfort of boredom for a few minutes, before rushing to the next stimulus. Small daily doses of silence work like small doses of encounter. At first, it feels like a waste of time. After a few weeks, something changes. Thoughts that were buried begin to surface. Answers you were searching for out there appear, with an almost embarrassing naturalness, in here. It's where they were all along. These concepts from Jung, like the shadow and the archetypes, form a universe that deserves to be explored slowly. If you're enjoying this content, check out our exclusive ebook, Alchemy and Archetypes, in the first comment. Before we finish, I need to clear up a misunderstanding that could ruin everything we've built so far. After all this, you might be thinking the answer is to cut ties and live isolated from the world. It's not. Jung himself was emphatic on this point. The goal of individuation was never permanent isolation. The mountain exists for the descent. The retreat exists for the return. You step away from the world to come back to it more whole, not to abandon it. And there's a surprising side effect to this process. Those who make peace with themselves relate better to everyone, because a great deal of human conflict comes from empty people trying to complete themselves through one another. Suffocating jealousy, devouring neediness, fear of abandonment, the desperate need for approval. All of it is hunger for yourself being demanded of someone else. When you find yourself in solitude, you stop using other people as medicine. And then, for the first time, you can truly love. Not out of lack, out of overflow. Loneliness lived well doesn't pull you away from people. It gives you back to them, whole, and makes every bond truer than any connection the mask ever managed to create. So let's return to the question that opened this video. How does loneliness lead to greatness? Now you know, because it's the only territory where you meet yourself without interference. No audience to please, no herd to follow, no noise to hide behind, no mask to hold up. That feeling of not belonging, which you've carried for so long like a source of shame, may be proof that there's something in you that hasn't come into the world yet. A calling waiting for an answer. Starting today, you can do things differently. Set aside real moments of silence, without screens and without escape, and face whatever shows up, even what hurts. Then walk, step by step, toward who you really are. You're not lost, you're on your way. And the way begins exactly where you are right now, alone, and for the first time, in good company. If this message touched something in you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because that's what allows these reflections to reach more people who are going through this same loneliness in silence. And if you want to go deeper on this journey, join our members club and get access to exclusive content we don't publish here. Now tell me in the comments, what was the moment in your life when loneliness taught you the most? See you in the next video.